Welcome to Defence Connects, the Progress Report, the show spotlighting the women shaping Australia's defence and national security.
Welcome to Defence Connects, the Progress Report, the podcast where we explore the stories, careers and experiences of women working across Australia's defence and national security sectors. I'm your host, Tash Taylor, and in each episode, I'm sitting down with industry professionals to talk about their journeys, personal growth, mentorship, and what it really takes to build a meaningful career in one of the country's most complex and essential industries. My guest today is the lovely Amelia De Angelis, Chief Operating Officer for Kinexus and co-founder of The Future Through Collaboration. Thank you so much for joining me today, Amelia.
Thanks for having me.
Now, look, I'm super excited to be chatting with you. And the reason we sort of got chatting initially is because a lovely Olivia A. Gate, who was my first ever guest I had on the show. She spoke so highly about you in her interview with me, and I knew we needed to get you on here.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. And I think she ran out of the studio and called me.
That doesn't surprise me.
I've spoken about you need to do it. So I'm very thrilled to be here.
So it's been a long time coming. So I've got so many questions for you. I think we'll just dive in straight away. And I thought we'd initially start by just winding it back. And I want to know, where did your career journey actually start and what eventually led you to your role at Kinexus?
Yeah. So that's going a little bit down memory lane. So where I got to, I was studying and I decided to take a year off.
Gap year, okay.
Yep, I've studied for a while now. I want to take some time off, and I ended up getting a role in a recruitment company. And I had not had any involvement in that type of business before and had not necessarily had any interest in getting into that space. But when you take a year off, you kind of just throw the doors open and say, let's see what happens. And what happened in that role is I really fell in love with the business side of things.
Okay.
So from there, a few steps away, I ended up with Kinexus, and that was quite a few years ago now. So I've been there for 17 years, and that was how I ended up in defence industry, and that's how I ended up in Kinexus, was joining a company who was at a really exciting phase in their growth. So had big kind of plans to grow, and I wanted to be part of that journey. And I've been part of that journey now for a really long time.
That's awesome. And did you, before joining Kinexus, did you ever did you know much about the defence industry? Was this your first sort of introduction to the space?
Yeah, I knew nothing. Because Kinexus had worked in the defence industry and because of the type of work that we do, we had a lot of people who were ex-uniformed. So I would say at least half the team had that direct personal connection. And I had a huge journey of learning acronyms and learning.
Oh, yes. Defence love an acronym.
Learning about what was involved. And I think that for somebody who hasn't been in the industry, it's a really foreign industry. It's a very kind of, if you're not inside of it, it's not something that you necessarily know very much about, unlike some other industries where you don't necessarily have to be part of it to understand or have some touch points with it. So it was a introduction by fire. And luckily there's a lot of people there with a lot of knowledge who were very, very happy to share that.
I find that most people I speak to, are the same sort of boat, in that you sort of stumble into this industry a lot of the times. You don't necessarily plan to be there. And it's just that natural career progression that you just end up here. I know for me as well, I mean, I didn't know the first thing about defence. You try and, when I was asked to sort of look after our defence portfolio here, I was very hesitant because I had sort of done the financial services side of things and whatnot, and I'd written, for Lawyers Weekly previously, and I had absolutely no idea about anything to do with defence. But God, when you're in it, it's one of the coolest, most exciting industries you can be part of. Indo-Pacific was a couple of weeks ago, and you just walk around that trade show room, and you're like, oh my gosh, look at everything.
It connects everything. You see it in real life, and I think from my work with TFTC, which I'm sure we'll talk about at some point.
Yes, definitely. We'll get to that.
But speaking to lots of women who've come into the industries, you've got some people who've had that exposure, whether it's been, through family or friends, but there's so many people who have ended up here and fallen in love with kind of the bits and pieces that they do.
Absolutely. Look, I wanted to touch on something that you mentioned to me, and I thought this was a really cool, quirky little question for you. And you've mentioned the need to accept and embrace your awkward self. Can you elaborate on that sentiment?
Yeah. So I think that when you work in the defense industry, which has certain connotations around like how you need to show up, and that I think it can be really easy to fall into the trap of thinking that you have to be a certain way. Yeah. And that you need to present in a way that might sometimes close off parts of yourself. And if I reflect on my own journey, there's been times where I've spent so much time caught up in my own head, thinking about how I want to show up in that moment, that it's overtaken actually the core purpose of being in a room with somebody or having that conversation, because you're so internally focused. And for a long time, that was something that I tried to, manage the way that we presented. And then I got to this place where it was just way too hard. It was too hard to be constantly thinking in that space of, well, how do I want to show up in this moment from a way that maybe like holds back something that is part of me. And it's been really powerful to just sit in a space and accept and say, well, I am the girl that grew up in the country, and sometimes I can be a bit socially awkward and I might not know what to say. But that is really freeing for the people that you're around as well, because I think when you end up in a leadership role or when you have the ability where, you're able to influence others, if you can show up as you are, awkward parts and all, it gives everybody else permission. It gives everybody else around you permission to show up as they are as well.
I agree fully, because there's that pressure, especially when I think you're sort of first starting out and, everyone's wearing their suits and they look so professional. And like you said, there's a fear of asking questions and looking like you don't know enough, when in reality, I think, like you said, if you just embrace who you are, don't be afraid to ask those questions or to be your quirky self, because again, like you said, you're giving permission to everyone else to relax then, and be themselves. And then you get more out of someone when they're not trying to pretend to be something else.
Exactly. And obviously it takes time to build that confidence.
Oh,
And I look back and I can't tell my 20-year-old self, oh, just be your quirky self, because I would have been horrified at that prospect.
Absolutely.
But, I remember in the earlier days, like I, used to have a jacket that made me feel fantastic. And so, that would be my sign or my armor to just, okay, you're feeling great. You're wearing something that you feel great in. Maybe have that little bit of courage to just sit in the moment and say what comes to your mind. Don't be worried about how that might be received.
Exactly. And look, 9 times out of 10 as well, if you don't know something, there's probably someone else sitting in the room that also has no clue.
Absolutely.
And they're just too afraid to say it as well. And I've absolutely been in that spot before where you're like, do I say something? Do I not? I don't know.
And I think working in this industry, you have to get comfortable asking the questions because there's so much to know. And, I've worked in and around the industry for so long now, and I still find myself regularly in conversations where I'm like, can you just explain that to me again?
Oh, especially when it comes to acronyms. I don't know how accurate this is, but someone at Indo-Pacific told me that they heard that there's about 20,000 acronyms across the industry. So there's literally no possible way for anyone to know. I probably know a good 50, but that's probably
and
about
there's new
it.
ones, right?
Oh,
there's
always
new ones that
coming
come
up.
And it doesn't exist outside the industry. Like, so if you're coming in, it's not like you have this knowledge base that you can come with. You literally have to learn it on the job.
Yeah, literally have to learn it on the job. And I think that was one of the things I found most daunting when I came into the space, because you're having conversations with people that are extremely intelligent and they live, eat, breathe defense and then their sort of sector, and they can be talking about different operations and things and that are happening in different tenders, and if you don't know the acronyms, you're a bit lost. But now I'm fine with just going,
You're
okay,
leading it.
which one are we talking about? Do explain.
It is like that. It is like that.
It is definitely. So one thing you just mentioned before was leadership, and I wanted to circle back to that, because you have led teams made up of people with very different backgrounds, personalities, working styles. How do you approach leading a team who aren't like you? And what have you learned about adapting your leadership style along the way?
Yeah. I feel like every role that I've had, leadership role that I've been leading people very different to me, generally more experienced in whatever their subject matter is. But I think it's a really common experience across the industry, and especially getting to speak to lots of different women that work across the industry. It's a story you hear often. It's, I'm leading a team, people who are maybe older than me, people who have maybe got more, on the ground experience in certain things. And I think the thing for me that I've had to get comfortable with is that sometimes I'm not going to be the expert. I might sit in a leadership role, but that doesn't mean that you are going to know everything. And it doesn't mean that asking the people around you to contribute their knowledge to the decision that needs to be made, or the strategy that needs to be developed. Like, that's actually a really empowering thing for the people that you work with. And so one of the things that I've probably more consciously incorporated is like more of that collaborative style from a leadership perspective of being able to, leverage the people that are around me instead of, sometimes I think when people come, and I'm sure I definitely came with that early in my career, where it's like if you're in a leadership role, you're in a management role, like you're expected to be the one leading the group in terms of making the decisions. But I think you learn over time that leadership's about creating the right framework to get other people to contribute their best self so that you can get to the best outcome together. And so coming back to what I was saying earlier about some of it is just embracing the fact that you don't know everything, and accepting that, and that's okay. But also tapping into, well, what is it that you bring that others don't bring?
Absolutely.
Because there's a reason that you've been put in that position to lead that team. And so working out why that is, and trusting that whoever's put you in that place sees something really unique about your ability to perform in that type of role, and trusting that you work with really smart people and somebody wouldn't have put you there if you didn't absolutely have the ability to do that well.
I think that's exactly what you're talking about, sort of having a level of imposter syndrome. Absolutely. And I've talked about this with, I think, almost every woman who's come on here has had the same, in some way, shape or form. And it's not just women, men as well. You sort of face having some level of imposter syndrome. What's been the best way for you that you've overcome it personally?
Yeah. So I remember I was in a session actually that we were running for TFTC, and we we had this beautiful host, and she's like, you've got this little voice on one shoulder, which which is that imposter syndrome voice. It's the voice telling you that you don't belong there, you don't have the skills, you all the reasons why you can't. She's like, you've got to have that voice that's at least equal. That's the cheerleader that's sitting there, that's sitting on your other shoulder, and what you want to try and do is feed that cheerleader to be louder than that voice, because the voice doesn't go away. It doesn't matter how far you climb. That's been my experience. It doesn't matter how far down the track, it still exists there. But for me personally, like, you have people who are in your life who are your cheerleaders. And it was in that moment when it was put like that, I've got one of, a person who is a real life person in my life, who is somebody who you have a conversation with, and they're the person that bigs you up. They're the person that's like, you're amazing. And then I visually have that person who's like on my shoulder. And in those moments when I'm saying, hang on, I'm not sure that I can do that thing, I just picture them saying, you absolutely can. Because you can do that thing. You just need to balance that inner voice in your head.
And back yourself. I like that sort of thinking. It's almost like the devil and the angel on your shoulder, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's just the equilibrium. It's instead of just having the one there that's kind of leading it, don't let that voice be too big.
Are there any other challenges that you think that you've had to overcome while trying to be a leader?
Oh gosh, there's so many. I think for me, like, I'm somebody who, I need a lot of information to make decisions, and I like all the data, and I like to be able to know that whatever decision I'm making, it's made in a logical way that's driven by data. And sometimes you just don't have all of that available to you. And so you're faced in a position where you're making the best decision based on the information at hand, whether it's a strategic decision or whether it's a decision for your team.
Yeah.
And again, accepting that making a decision is sometimes better than waiting for all the information to try and make the right decision. And getting comfortable with that uncertainty. Yeah. Because that's really, when you're working in a leadership type of role, you're managing uncertainty, and you're managing, gaps in clarity, but trying to provide that for the people that you work with.
Yeah. No, I completely agree with everything you've said. And look, I would love to sort of touch on now, and we keep saying TFTC, the future through collaboration. Can you explain to all our listeners what it is? And then I guess we'll sort of touch on mentorship after, but I would love for you to sort of explain the journey there as well.
Yeah. So TFTC, the future through collaboration, is, as you've said, but it's known as TFTC, is, I guess, a collaboration that started more than 10 years ago, where, Kinexus, along with other organisations, came together and wanted to look at how we could support women who were working in industry. How could we provide them collectively an opportunity to access mentorship? And that's where TFTC was born from. So it's a mentoring program for women working in defence and defence industry, in STEM and project management roles. And it provides them with the opportunity to participate in a 12-month mentoring program. We have a wonderful partner, Leading Well, who run quarterly facilitated sessions. And, mentoring is a really personal journey.
Oh, yeah.
And so whilst we put the structure in place and we provide the opportunity for women to step into that space, and we've got wonderful mentors who volunteer to be part of that, it then really is up to the individual to direct where they want their journey to go over that time. And after running for 10 years, I think I was mentioning to you earlier, we had our big 10-year celebration last year. It's something that's, when I reflect back on my time, like something that I'm really proud of, to have been able to have the ability to start that. And then it's kind of grown a bit of a life of its own, that's driven it forward over those years.
Absolutely. And look, have any of the old mentees come back as mentors?
So many.
Interesting.
So many mentees. And for us, that's like a full circle moment.
That's an absolute full circle moment.
It's a full circle moment. I remember the first time we had one of our mentees come back as a mentor and just feeling so thrilled. I'm like, we're really onto something here because, for somebody to have gone through that journey and gone, hang on, I now really want to give back because I gained so much from it. But so many of our mentors have come through as mentees and so many of our mentors have, contributed their time year after year after year, which I think is really powerful in terms of speaking to not just the program, but that sense of giving that exists in the industry.
Yeah.
I remember at the first launch, and we started with a pilot program. So we had like 12 mentees come, and one of the comments that was made to me is, I can't believe all these people are here and all these people care.
Oh, that's really sweet.
And there's so many people that care about the individual journeys of people working in the industry.
And is it specific, who can be a mentee?
Yeah, so really you need to work in defence industry and come from a STEM or project manager related field. So lots of different job families and identify as a woman. So that's the boxes, I guess. That's kind of
nice and broad, which is fantastic.
Yeah. And we have some wonderful supporting organisations that support that participation. And then mentors, we really look for people who are happy to and want to contribute their time. And we have men who are mentors and we have women who are mentors and work in that sort of space as well, have come through that journey that our mentees are kind of on.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, looking back at the past 10 years, are there any standout moments that have really stuck with you through that journey?
Oh, one standout moment was definitely the 10-year mark when we started it, when we ran the first pilot program. As you can imagine, you're 12 people, you're trying to prove concept. It was a dream. Like getting to 10 years was really a dream and one of those dreams that you weren't sure was going to be a reality.
Oh, yeah.
And so stepping into that year really was a momentous occasion, not just for me, but we have a steering committee that oversees the program. And a lot of the people on the steering committee have been there for the whole journey, or if not the whole journey, a really large part of that journey. And so I think it was a moment for all of us to sit there and just reflect. We've created this amazing program that's continuing year after year. But I'm always blown away by the support from the supporting organisations and the interest. And what I love is hearing the stories. Because I think you step into mentoring, especially a structured mentoring program, and a lot of the time, you don't necessarily know what you want to get out of it. You might have some loose goals or some loose kind of plans. And then when you have the opportunity to speak to mentees on the other side and it's taken them on a path, they've gone on a pathway they never expected to, and they've gained so much more value. And what I love to hear is the stories of confidence, because I think that's what you get from mentoring is by having someone who is a champion. It's probably that person like on your corner going, no, you can do this. You're doing great. Giving you a safe space to explore whatever thoughts or plans that you might have. It's that increasing confidence that sits on the other side when you hear people talking. You're like, you're ready for whatever comes next. You're ready.
No, I completely get what you're saying. And are there? I don't know if you're sort of allowed to delve into it, but are there any specific stories, ones that really stand out to you that you sort of like to speak about?
Yeah, it's there's heaps of stories, but there's one in particular, and it was a woman who kind of came in, and through her time in the program, she had an opportunity to go for a promotion, and mentoring's not all about going for promotions, and so I'll share this story, and there's probably one other, which is a bit of a flip side. So, but she had this opportunity to go for a promotion, a big promotion that was kind of like in technically like a step beyond kind of the track that should have been on. And working with her mentor, she went for it. She went for it with no kind of certainty of what the outcome was. But by having that person who was sitting there alongside her going, you absolutely should go for this. She went for it and she got it.
Oh,
and she
wow.
got it.
That's
and,
awesome.
You know, I was talking to her after it, and she's like, there's no way that I would have even put my hat in the ring, because technically on paper, first I needed to do this, and then I could have pursued that, and then I could have got there, you know, would have had an opportunity to go for that thing. But just by having that person who was saying, go for it, and not in a uninformed way, not go for something you definitely
won't. But
Zero
actually
you've got the qualifications, you've got the experience, you've got the capability to do it, and just by having that champion to go, that's always stood out as a really a testament
Absolutely.
to kind of what creating that safe space and support can. But personally, each year at the launch, we invite a mentee to deliver a remark. And, you know, over the years, as I've kind of stepped back from the day-to-day running of the program, sometimes I walk into that and I don't know the story of the person who's going to get up and deliver the remark. And one year, one of the mentees got up and you know, her whole goal that she shared was around, you know, sustainability. So she had got up and, you know, at the beginning of her journey, her goal had been to create more of a sustainable life. You know, she did have kids, she wanted to grow her career, but feeling like in this place of like push and pull constantly. And for me personally, in that moment, I had this realization of, that's what I'm trying to create. And so it was one of those moments where, you know, you hear somebody else's story and that frames what you're working with. And it was in that moment that I was like, oh, that's what I'm seeking. And I think that is, it kind of gives that example of like the scope of what you might be working through in a mentoring program. It's not all about the promotion. It's not all about the career. Sometimes it's about where you are in life and what you need to make life feel better for you.
Yeah. No, I completely understand what you're saying. And, you know, I think the S word does get thrown out quite a bit. And I love that sort of sustainability is just as important as getting those promotions and progressing in your career, just being able to have a work-life balance. And I know that you've sort of talked about how, you know, you are a mum and you've got a couple kids and you've had to sort of do that juggling act of you work for Kinexus, you're also running the Future Through Collaboration, and you've got children at home. Can you tell us a little bit about how you balance this all and how you keep it sustainable as well?
Yeah. So number one, the balance doesn't exist. Like, I don't use that word. And, you know, when anybody ever says to me, how do you do it? Like, there is no balance. Sometimes, you know, there's more needed here and sometimes there's more needed there. But what I've gotten really clear about, and this is an ongoing journey.
Yeah.
I'm not sitting here saying I've got it all down track either. But is just getting clearer on some of those boundaries that I need to put in place to be able to maintain my sanity. Like, for me, that's what sustainability is about, is maintaining my sanity. And so some of that is about being clear on, well, what are some of those boundaries in order to be able to show up where I need to in the best way. So, you know, one of those things is, for example, it's a small thing, but like I try to make sure I even go to bed at a certain time, because otherwise I don't have enough energy. And, you know, I've got 3 kids. My youngest is 8. There's a lot of emotional input that's needed.
Yes.
And so you need to have certain things in place in order to be able to show up the way you need to. And then when you've got a big job, you need to have the brain space to be able to make the decisions or step into the conversation, be present, and all of those things. And so, yeah, I think getting clearer on some of those boundaries that allow you to keep everything rolling, and being really clear about like what are those glass balls and what are the bouncy balls, because you're going to drop balls. You're definitely going to drop balls. For me, my kid's definitely going to turn up at training with the wrong boots or no boots. Has happened. But that's not a glass ball. It's okay.
That's a bouncy ball for sure.
That's a bouncy ball. Whereas, there's other, but I think it takes a little bit of getting across, and I think it depends on your personality type as well. If I reflect on myself, like I'm somebody who likes to have everything running. I think that working in a COO type role, like you have a natural kind of way of thinking, which is quite systematic, and you want everything to be, running smoothly. But you throw 3 children in, and that
creates
just
chaos.
That does
in the
not
best
happen.
way.
Yeah, it doesn't happen. But you're going to drop balls, and so you're just getting clear on which ones are those glass balls and which don't really matter, even though you feel like they might matter.
I think the boundaries, like you said, are such an important thing to give yourself, because then it's a slippery slope, and a lot of the time you can end up putting far too much on your plate and not giving yourself permission to relax. And again, that's something a lot of people have touched on here, is having those healthy boundaries. But I absolutely love the way that you framed that, of having the glass balls and the bouncy balls. Because you're right, everyone is going to drop the ball at some point on something. It's inevitable. Everyone does it. But you're right, it's just framing what really matters and those letting the small things go.
Yeah, and sometimes the big things, if they're bouncy.
Yeah.
Like, that's okay.
Honestly, yeah.
It's okay. It's not the end of the world. Yeah. But it's taken a long time to get okay with that.
Yeah. You just got to sit with it.
I remember the first time we forgot, to do a pickup or something, and it was a pickup. And in that moment, because sometimes it takes making those things going wrong for you to go, oh, it's okay.
Yeah.
Somebody called and said, oh, you've missed the pickup. And we picked them up. A bit late. But
it's fine.
It's fine. But before that would have been a glass ball for me.
But
it's not.
Or it's when you make a doctor's appointment and you forget about it and you don't show up and you get a text. You're like, oh, It's just one of those things. Sometimes, unfortunately, things just, you're too busy, too many things on your plate, and then you just forget.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things that you just got to let go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think one of the things that you just touched on there, which was like relaxation, like that you also need to make time for that as well.
You do, and you need to. And if you're the type of person that likes to schedule everything, you need to schedule your relaxation time then.
But you kind of do.
You kind of do.
It sounds funny, but you kind of do. And I think when people look at me and they're like, oh, you do what feels like so many things, and it's like, yeah, but you got to be clear about what you're doing when.
Yeah, and I think that's key.
And it's not about scheduling necessarily, but it's just about being clear about what you're doing when, and that giving yourself permission to be present in that moment, whether that's with your kids or whether that's at work, focusing on what you need to be doing there.
When it comes to mentorship, because obviously you are the queen of mentoring, were there any mentors that really shaped your journey, and why is paying it forward and championing mentorship so important to you now?
Yeah. So I've been really lucky that I've had the support of a couple of mentors through my career, like very, very early. I was really fortunate to be connected with somebody who was incredibly generous with their time, but also their support and sharing of their experience, and quite a pivotal impact on my my journey and the career that I've built beyond that. And, they did that without any that's mentoring, did it without any desire to have anything return to them. And it was that generosity of spirit that I really felt beyond just what they shared in terms of their story. It was that generosity of spirit of somebody showing up and caring
and
enough
giving
to
you 100%.
invest. Yeah, that really gave me so much more than just the experience that they were sharing. And it's something that I've carried on through my career from there is how impactful it can be to just show up for someone else. And I was, really lucky that a few years ago I'd met a person actually through TFTC, and they weren't really in my direct sphere of influence, but I got to this point and I was like, I really feel like I need to reach out, and I think that they're really smart, interesting person. And I reached out and I just asked the question and said, would you be willing to give me an hour of your time once a month? And she said yes. And I jumped on the opportunity, and then over the space of kind of 6 months, she just created a space for me to have a conversation and explore things together. And again, she was just so generous with her time and willing to share and just willing to create space without an agenda or without kind of a direction. And gave me the space to work through some of those things that sometimes it's hard to in a work context, because you don't you might be working through something that isn't directly, like you're not sure about what pathway you are looking to follow in that decision, or and having that independent party is really valuable.
And in terms of, well, I guess that sort of answers the question anyway as to why you sort of want to pay it forward, because you've had that firsthand experience of having someone sort of be there for you in those moments where you just want to chat something through and to help guide you along your career.
Absolutely. So I think that for me, like I've had personal experience, like I've gained personally from people being very generous and willing to step into that space for me. And also, seeing the benefit that gives to other people. So, stepping into that space yourself when you're in a position to be able to do that and being present with somebody and creating that space for them, you see how much it means to them. So, it really is that, starfish on the beach exercise where it is something that is so impactful to that one person, and you don't know the impact, because I think sometimes mentoring is one of those things that it's not for years to come necessarily, that someone might look back and go, that, for me, I look back at that person 20 years ago who gave me that time, and that happened a really long time ago, but the footprints of that still are impacting on me today.
That's a really beautiful way of putting it. I think that's lovely, the footprints. And I think, it does have that lasting effect, doesn't it? And then you just sort of want to pay it forward.
Yeah. One of the steering committee for TFTC, her name's Shahida Bakor, super smart, wonderful woman. She talks about the ripple effects of mentoring. And that's really what it is, because it's not just the impact for the person, but it's the person and what they go on to do and how they go on to impact the people that are around them. And that's why I champion it, because it's something that's done at that individual level, but actually the impact is far greater.
And when you talk about that ripple effect, isn't it just crazy to look back and you think, wow, you're a little pilot program that started with 12 people and now it's been going for 10 years.
Yeah.
Do you know how many women now that you've had as mentees in that 10 years? and mentors?
Yeah, it's upwards of 600.
Wow. Okay. That's actually more than what I thought you were going to say.
Yeah.
Wow. So that's 600 women who have come through now, and because of this idea you had, have now been so positively impacted. And like you said, now think about all the women that in their lives that they've gone on to impact.
Yeah.
That's
ripples.
incredible. How many women, how many mentees per year do you typically get now?
So it varies. So at the moment this year we've got, I think it's 35 in this year's program of mentees.
That's awesome.
And yeah, we really just meet the demand that's at that moment in time. So I think the most we've had is 65.
And to think that you started out with 12.
Yeah.
And now it's just grown from there. Oh my gosh.
Ripple effects.
Yeah, ripple effects, so many. And like you said, full circle moments when you're having these women who were mentees and now mentors.
Yeah.
And you should be very proud of yourself. Honestly, the amount you single-handedly helping to create such a meaningful program has impacted the lives of so many women in this industry.
Not single-handedly though. So many people,
So many, but
people.
you are a pinnacle person in this that has helped facilitate this.
Yeah. And I think it's one of those things that if you've got the personal passion and then you connect with other people who've got the personal passion, you can make amazing things happen.
And drive incredible change.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Oh, I love it. It's just a happy story. I love these sort of, when people have sort of started these crazy, amazing initiatives and you impact so many people's lives. And, one of the biggest challenges in defence right now is that, there's not enough, people to fill roles within the industry. But when you do these types of things, there's women going out there and, definitely telling other women about, or anyone really, about what an awesome space this is to work in. And it just sort of chips away at that, doesn't it? And you're getting more interest from people because they want to be like part of such a cool community. So I just think it's awesome. And obviously very fulfilling. And when we're talking about fulfillment through opportunities, I know that you have sort of mentioned previous to me before that you actually also get involved in community involvement outside of work. So what does that sort of look like? And how have those outside experiences helped you grow personally and professionally?
Yeah. So I mentioned like I've got kids and we're a big basketball family.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, a big basketball family. And so, I've coached
You're a coach.
kids basketball.
I love that.
Which I love. I really love. And yeah, for me, so I for 5 years sat on a community services board as a volunteer board director, and I'm still involved in that community service. And I think I talk to people about this sometimes because I think you can get hyperfixated on your job and your job title and the work that you do, and you can have certain goals for yourself, or there's certain things that you want to do or learn. And, I really feel like that is kind of part, and obviously it's the large part. You spend upwards of 40 hours a week doing our job if you work full time. But we're also part of a community, and yeah, obviously we're here, we're talking about the defence industry community, but we're part of a local community as well. And, there's going to be times where maybe you don't have the opportunity to explore something within a work context or that. And there's so many opportunities out there for you to be able to give your time to contribute in a really meaningful way, but also to learn. And you take that learning back into your role as well. And so for me, I don't know whether it's because I grew up in the country and it's just kind of like part of how my community existed, is that really required everyone to pitch in. But it's something that I've really loved getting involved with, and have really seen the impact that that's then had back on bringing it in, because you're working with different people. And I think defense industry, you talked about it, it's quite a connected industry. You know, you kind of exist in this little ecosystem of a bubble. And, you know, when you take those opportunities to not leave your day job, but to expand and explore different things, like community services is so different. To, you know, the industry works so differently, and working in that kind of, or volunteering in that kind of capacity, you're working with people from all different organisations as well, that it just gives you different reference points to then come back into, well, how do you approach this thing over here as well?
Yeah. No, and I think you're completely right in that, you know, you can take those skills as well, can't you?
You want to learn patience? You go and teach 8-year-olds how to play basketball. If you want to work out, if you want to test your skills in terms of leading a team in one direction,
then that is the best way to do it.
That is a test. I cannot tell you. I thought I'd had some things mastered, and then the first time I stepped onto court to coach, because I'm not a basketballer. It's not something that I had subject matter expertise in. I've watched a lot of basketball.
Did you grow up playing basketball?
I played a little bit of basketball in primary school, but not enough. Not enough to then stand on the side of the court knowing what I'd done. But I think, you know, anybody who's got kids involved in sport, community sport only exists through volunteerism. Like, it only exists by having people who put their hand up and step forward. But it gives you a different reference point. And there have been times where I'm like, this work thing is not hard, because running that 45-minute training that I've got to do
with a bunch of 8-year-olds
later in my day, that's going to test me more than this thing is going to right now.
Yeah.
But there's something about setting that environment for kids to like learn and grow and try different things and make mistakes, and teaching them that that's okay.
I think it definitely,
it's really
it definitely sort of, you can use those skills for sure, 100%. And I think it's just awesome that you didn't really grow up playing and you stepped up to the plate. I think that's awesome. And you know what? It's going to be something that your kids are going to remember forever as well.
Will they? I'm not sure, but
they will.
I think I will. You hear from people who are further down the track, and they're like, it's always a thing you look back on. You're like, oh, they were the good.
Absolutely.
Years. They were the good
Absolutely. Years. Look, before we run out of time, now we do a little segment at the end of the show where we called it Words on the Board. And I just would like to know if you could leave our listeners with a short insight or piece of advice for their careers, or whatever you would like to touch on. Just any sort of insight or piece of advice you'd like to leave the listeners.
Yeah. So I appreciate you didn't give me the heads up until we walked in today. But I think the thing for me would be 10 seconds of courage. You can do anything with 10 seconds of courage. Starting is always the hardest part. But if you can step into that space and give yourself 10 seconds of courage, you'll be able to do whatever you need to that comes on the other side of those 10 seconds.
That is beautiful. I love it. Everyone manages to think of these in spur of the moment, and that's 10 seconds of courage. I'm gonna think about that as well next time I'm in a situation that I sort of need to have a bit more confidence in myself in. For sure.
10 seconds.
10 seconds. Look, thank you so much, Amelia, for joining me on the podcast today. Your insights have been absolutely incredible. And look, we'll be back in 2 weeks' time with another episode featuring more incredible voices and amazing stories from women in the defence industry.